They believed time would erase it. That silence would finish what secrecy started. That without documents, without proof, the truth would slowly fade into rumor. But history has a way of pushing back. By the early 1970s, the United States was unraveling. Trust in authority was collapsing. Vietnam had exposed official lies. Watergate proved deception reached the highest levels of power. For the first time in decades, Americans were no longer asking, "Is the government telling us the truth?" They were asking, "What else are they hiding?" Journalists began pulling at loose threads. Unusual research grants, mysterious foundations, experiments with no clear public benefit. Across different cities, different states, different institutions, the same stories kept appearing. People who entered hospitals and never left the same. Students who volunteered for research and lost months of memory. Soldiers who returned home confused, anxious, fractured. At first, these stories were dismissed. Anecdotes, coincidences, psychological weakness. But the patterns were undeniable. Behind closed doors, pressure began to build. And then something unprecedented happened. The government agreed to investigate itself. In 1975, Senate committees were formed, subpoenas issued, witnesses summoned, oaths sworn. For the first time, a name surfaced publicly: MKUltra. Investigators quickly realized they were not dealing with a single experiment, but a sprawling network. Dozens of subprojects, universities, hospitals, prisons, military facilities. What they uncovered was horrifying. Human experimentation without consent. Mind-altering drugs administered secretly. Psychological techniques designed not to heal, but to break. But just as the investigation gained momentum, the truth began to disappear. Inside the CIA, a decision was made. If the program could not be defended, it would be erased. Orders were given quietly. No paper trail, no signatures. Files were shredded. Boxes of records burned. Entire archives destroyed. Years of history vanished in smoke. By the time Congress understood the true scale of MKUltra, most of the evidence was already gone. What remained were fragments. Financial records, partial memos, testimony from victims whose memories were damaged by the very experiments being investigated. Enough to prove MKUltra existed. Enough to confirm abuse. But not enough to fully expose who authorized what, or how far it truly went. Victims came forward. Some told their stories publicly. Others could barely speak of it. Families demanded answers. They were given apologies without responsibility. Compensation was rare. Justice was minimal. No senior officials went to prison. No public reckoning followed. The official explanation was short. Mistakes were made. The program was terminated. Safeguards were implemented. But one question refused to disappear. If this could happen once, in secret, with approval, what guaranteed it would never happen again? This was not closure. This was containment. And sometimes, the cover-up tells you more than the crime itself. They said it was over. That MKUltra belonged to a darker past. a different world, a different mindset, and officially, the program ended. But ideas do not disappear when programs are shut down. They evolve. MKUltra was never just a project. It was proof. Proof that fear can override ethics, that secrecy can normalize cruelty, that power, when unchecked, will always test how far it can go. After the investigations, reforms were promised. Oversight committees, ethical guidelines, rules written to ensure it would never happen again. And yet, one truth remained impossible to ignore. The knowledge gained from MKUltra was never destroyed. It was studied, cataloged, absorbed. The methods were no longer described as experiments. They were rebranded: behavioral science, cognitive research, psychological operations, influence and perception studies. The language changed. The intent sounded cleaner, but the foundation remained the same. If you understand how humans think, you can influence how they act. And in the modern world, influence is more powerful than force. Today, mind control does not require drugs and dark rooms. It does not need hidden safe houses. It does not require secrecy in the same way. The battlefield has moved into screens, into data, into algorithms designed to capture attention. What people see, what they fear, what they repeat, what they slowly come to accept as normal. Unlike MKUltra, these systems are visible. They are legal. They are profitable. They are welcomed into everyday life. This does not mean history is repeating itself exactly, but it does mean the warning still matters. MKUltra showed us that under pressure, even democratic systems can justify the unthinkable, that ordinary people can become test subjects, that morality can be postponed in the name of security. The experiment ended, but the question it raised never did. Who controls information? Who shapes belief? And who decides when influence becomes abuse? Project MKUltra is not just a secret from the past. It is a mirror. And what it reflects is not history alone, but the choices still being made today. The files may be gone, but the lesson remains, and it is still unfolding. There is a reason Project MKUltra continues to disturb people decades after it officially ended. Not simply because of what was done, but because of what it revealed about power, fear, and human nature. MKUltra exposed a truth that is uncomfortable to confront. That under the right conditions, morality can become negotiable. That fear can override law. That secrecy can turn ordinary institutions into instruments of harm. The program did not begin with chaos. It began with justification. A belief formed inside intelligence circles that the threat facing the nation was so extreme, so unprecedented, that normal rules no longer applied. If the enemy was willing to control minds, then America had to understand that power first. And if understanding required crossing ethical lines, then those lines would simply be redrawn. This mindset is what made MKUltra possible. Because once the goal is framed as survival, almost anything can be excused. The scientists involved did not see themselves as villains. Many believed they were protecting their country. Many convinced themselves that the subjects were necessary sacrifices. Some even believed the damage was temporary, acceptable, or exaggerated. But the consequences were real. Lives were fractured. Identities were damaged. Trust in medicine, in science, and in authority was broken. And when the truth finally emerged, it did not bring justice. It brought silence. No sweeping trials. No mass accountability. No public reckoning equal to the scale of harm. The system absorbed the shock and moved on, which leads to the most unsettling lesson of all. MKUltra did not fail because it was exposed. It failed quietly, without consequence, and without closure. And that means the conditions that created it were never truly confronted. Because MKUltra was not an accident. It was the result of a mindset. A belief that power must always stay ahead of fear. That control is safer than uncertainty. That transparency is a weakness. Those beliefs did not vanish when the program ended. They adapted. Today, influence is rarely described as control. It is framed as guidance, optimization, engagement, behavioral insight. The tools are no longer syringes and dark rooms. They are data, algorithms, psychological profiling. The goal is no longer to break the mind. It is to shape it subtly, gradually, continuously. What people see first, what they see repeatedly, what they are encouraged to fear, what they are rewarded for believing. This does not mean modern systems are the same as MKUltra. History never repeats itself in identical form, but it does mean the warning still applies. MKUltra proved that when power operates without transparency, abuse becomes invisible. That when secrecy is normalized, accountability disappears. That when fear dominates decision-making, ethics become optional. The victims of MKUltra were not extremists. They were not enemies. They were ordinary people who trusted institutions meant to protect them. And that trust was weaponized. Which raises a question that history alone cannot answer. If something like MKUltra were happening today, would it look frightening? Or would it look efficient? Scientific? Necessary? Would it be hidden behind classified stamps? Or would it be wrapped in clean language, legal frameworks, and corporate partnerships? Because the most dangerous systems are not the ones people fear. They are the ones people accept. MKUltra reminds us that freedom is rarely taken by force. It is traded away gradually, in moments of panic, in promises of safety, in the belief that someone else is in control. The program ended. The files were destroyed. The headlines faded. But the responsibility it revealed did not disappear. To question authority, to demand oversight, to remember that fear is the most powerful justification ever invented. Project MKUltra was not just a scandal. It was a warning written in human lives. And warnings only matter if they are remembered, because history does not ask whether we are afraid. It asks what we are willing to sacrifice when we are.